So I've been using the iPhone Air for the past 2 weeks now, and boy is there a lot to talk about with this phone. It's taken me quite a while to figure out who this phone is really for. However, I think that I finally have an answer. So in this video, I'll be going over my real world experience using this device, explaining some of the issues that I've had along the way, and at the end, I'll be explaining why, despite the compromises, I still think that the iPhone Air is one of the best iPhones Apple have ever made. The design. The design of the iPhone Air is arguably its biggest selling point. At 5.6mm thick, it features an ultra slim and stylish design with a matte glass back and polished titanium edges. It looks and feels super premium, especially in the space black colorway, which I've gone for. With the way that the edges shine on this device, the phone almost feels like a piece of jewelry, very much like what we used to get on devices like the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 10. Now technically, this isn't the thinnest device Apple have ever made. The M4 iPad Pro still holds that crown at just 5.1mm compared to 5.6mm on the Air. However, in my hand, the Air does give the illusion of feeling slimmer. Looking at this thing on camera won't do it any justice. You really do have to hold this phone in the hand to appreciate how thin it is. And it's not just a gimmick. The design does have a real impact on the way you interact with and use this device. I find that the Air is a joy to use in the hand, especially when using it single-handed. It's a device that I always look forward to using. And when I compare it to something like my iPhone 16 Pro Max from last year, it feels a lot more comfortable to hold in the hand. In terms of size, the Air sits in between the regular Pro and Pro Max iPhones, with the screen measuring at 6.5 inches diagonally. I find this actually strikes a really good balance between fitting enough content on the screen without ever feeling like you're holding a device that's too big. The phone comfortably fits in all of my blazer pockets and my jeans, which isn't something that I can always say for the Pro Max. And with it having a 120Hz display, everything feels super smooth and snappy. Text on the screen feels incredibly sharp, and the colors are also vibrant. These new displays are also built with an anti-reflective coating and are capable of reaching up to 3000 nits of peak brightness versus 2000 on previous iPhone models. In theory, this should make viewing content outdoors feel easier. However, from my day-to-day experience, I actually haven't found the difference to be that noticeable compared to previous iPhones, so I wouldn't be upgrading to this phone for that purpose. Overall, it is pretty remarkable the engineering that went into designing this phone, especially considering the fact that the majority of the phone is just battery. The actual brain of the phone, the chip, the camera, everything else, that's all being housed in this bump at the top, which Apple are calling the plateau, which incidentally you can use as a resting point for your fingers when holding the phone to give you some extra grip. And the Air still features all of the other buttons that the regular iPhones have, including the action button and camera control, although I have found that the positioning of the camera control button this year makes it somewhat harder to trigger. However, this really is a minor issue. I know some people online have raised concerns about the durability of this phone, which is understandable given how thin it is. Now, this isn't something that I personally want to test myself, so I will refer you to Mr. Jerry Rig Everything's video and his stress test of the iPhone Air. And hopefully from that video, all of your concerns about durability will be assuaged. Overall, I'd go as far to say that this is probably my favorite iPhone design of all time. Alongside the new redesign in iOS 26, it definitely gives the iPhone a novelty factor, which I've personally not experienced in many years, probably not since the iPhone 10, which as a fun fact also released at the same £999 price tag as the iPhone Air, despite being released all the way back in 2018. Now for customers outside of the US, one thing to note about the iPhone Air is that it is only available as an eSIM version. Because of how slim this device is, the option to have a physical SIM card slot is now gone. I have heard that some people have had issues switching over to eSIM in certain countries with certain carriers, so that is something to be aware of. From my personal experience, switching over to eSIM was actually a very easy and pain-free process, requiring just a few simple steps that the phone walks you through in the settings app. The only bug that I did experience was last week. There were a couple of instances where my phone would come into contact with somebody else's phone and it would trigger a pop-up on their device asking if they wanted my number to switch over to theirs, which led to some pretty funny conversations at work. However, thankfully, I no longer seem to be having any of those issues. The iPhone Air is also rocking Apple's latest C1X modem, which is their own custom in-house cellular modem. Generally, I've not found the new modem to be any better than what we had in the iPhones last year. If anything, I'd argue that the signal is slightly worse than on my 16 Pro Max. I have noticed that when I'm commuting on the train, that my bars tend to drop a lot faster and a lot more frequently than before, and even in the middle of the city. I've had some issues with upload speeds being slightly slower than what I'm used to expecting. Now, the difference isn't significantly worse, and your experience might vary depending on where you live and who your particular carrier is. So I wouldn't not buy the iPhone Air because of this. However, I thought it was something that was worth noting. Another thing worth noting about the Air is that it has just a single speaker at the top, so there is no audio coming out of the bottom speaker grills, and this does result in the Air speakers having slightly less bass and volume compared to previous iPhones. However, I think that the loudness is generally okay. Personally, I tend not to use the speakers on my iPhone that much anyway, other than for taking phone calls or watching the occasional YouTube video, so this hasn't really been an issue for me. Now, when it comes to battery life, I have had some mixed results with the iPhone Air. Mileage is of course going to vary depending on your usage. However, from my day-to-day experience, and as a former Pro Max user, I have found myself struggling with the battery on the iPhone Air on a few days. Now, on most work days, when I wake up with my phone fully charged overnight and I go to work at a desk with a MagSafe charger, the battery is absolutely fine. You know, I can comfortably let this thing drain from 95% in the morning down to say 30% or 20% in the evening, with maybe a single small charge up in between. And generally, I'll end up with around 4 to 5 hours of screen on time. However, on days where maybe I've forgotten to charge my phone overnight, and I have to leave the house the next morning with 60%, or on days where I'm traveling and I maybe don't have the opportunity to regularly charge my phone throughout the day, I have been quite frustrated with the battery on this device. Most battery tests on YouTube seem to suggest that the iPhone Air can comfortably last you from 100 to 0% within a single day, which I'd say aligns with my own testing. However, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm using my phone, I'm generally not using it from 100 down to 0%. Well, I don't think that's how most ordinary users use their phone. And to be honest, I don't think that's healthy for your phone's battery in the long term either. Usually I'm hovering between 85 to around 30% on a given day. And when judging the iPhone Air on that scale, the battery isn't great. Now, I think there is an argument to be made that having a worse battery potentially does nudge you into using your phone slightly less, because you know that you can't afford to be wasting the battery doing things like scrolling through TikTok or Instagram, which arguably does force you to be in the present moment a bit more and less glued to your phone all the time, which you could see as a silver lining. However, I'd say that my main concern is that this phone is currently brand new at 100% capacity. In 3 years' time, when the battery is at say 88% capacity and running iOS 28, I don't think the phone is going to hold up very well. Obviously, that's just speculation, but knowing how previous iPhone models have aged after 3 years, I can see myself getting quite frustrated with this phone after a couple of years. So if you are going to get the iPhone Air, I'd say just know what you're getting yourself into when it comes to the battery. Like I say, most days you should be absolutely fine. However, on heavier days, you are going to need to be a bit more careful. My best advice would be to have a regular charging schedule where you always have access to some kind of charger at your desk or in your car. Ideally, try and always carry a battery pack in your bag if you can. You know, if you're eating out at a bar or restaurant, where possible, try and use the establishment's in-house Wi-Fi rather than your own mobile data. And if you do find yourself in situations where you suddenly need to leave the house with 40% to last you through the whole afternoon, which has actually happened to me on a few occasions, then you're just going to have to deal with it and accept that this is part of the package. It is also worth noting that the USB-C port on the iPhone Air only supports USB 2.0 speeds, so there's no Thunderbolt support here, although I can't imagine this is something that will matter to most users. The cameras. The cameras are another area where Apple have had to make some pretty big compromises on this phone. The iPhone Air features just a single 48 megapixel camera that can also digitally crop in to 1.5 times at 24 megapixels and 2 times at 12 megapixels. It's worth noting that the sensor in the Air is technically slightly smaller than what you get in the Pro iPhone models. And there's also no option to shoot in formats like ProRAW or Apple Log, which is something to bear in mind if you use any of those features. I'll show you some shots that I've been able to take with the 1x and 2x cameras. Overall, the focal lengths on this phone perform really well in most scenarios. I'd say I probably still prefer the default look that you get out of other cameras like the Pixel phones. Although you can see that these are perfectly acceptable images. Having said that, you can see that if you try and zoom in further than 2 times to capture faraway shots, the quality does degrade quite quickly because we don't have that telephoto camera. I think if you're just the regular person looking to use their phone to take photos of friends and families and capture special moments, having just the single camera on this phone is going to be fine. Like I say, the camera performs well in well-lit environments. Bringing subjects close to the camera also gives you a really nice natural background blur, and you can later edit the photographic styles of the images in the Photos app to get a specific look that you want. Now for me personally, I am very heavily into my photography and trying to get the very best quality pictures out of the iPhone. You know, this video right now is being shot on the iPhone 17 Pro Max, which isn't something I'd ever be able to do on the Air. However, if you're just the regular person, not looking to make use of the telephoto or ultra-wide cameras, then I honestly think the camera in this phone is fine. When it comes to performance, the iPhone Air is rocking the latest A19 Pro chip from Apple, -1 GPU core compared to the Pros. During day-to-day usage, the Air feels super snappy, even when gaming, but then again, so does every other iPhone made in the last 3 years. Now, because of how thin this device is, and the fact that it's made from titanium, there has been some concern over whether this phone overheats and throttles performance, because titanium is not known for being the most thermally efficient material out there. And the answer is yes, the phone does overheat. Just last week, I was using this phone outside during my lunch break at work. I was using mobile data and had the brightness turned all the way up, and I could definitely feel the phone getting somewhat warm in the sun, despite it just being 18 degrees here in the UK. Similarly, if I'm editing photos in Lightroom during the evenings, after a while, the phone does get warm. Even playing games like GTA San Andreas, which I wouldn't say is that intensive of a game, occasionally causes the back of the phone to warm up. Having said that, the difference isn't actually that bad when you're comparing it to previous iPhone models, like the iPhone 16 Pro Max from last year. So if you're coming from one of those phones, yes, you're not going to notice an improvement in thermal performance per se. However, equally, you're not going to notice that big of a downgrade. Overall, I think the iPhone Air might just be one of the best iPhones Apple has ever made. Yes, there are definitely some serious compromises with respect to the battery and the cameras on this thing. However, I think that as long as you know what you're getting yourself into and you're comfortable with making those trade-offs, then the benefits that you get in terms of the new, more modern design are well worth it. Now, for me personally, I'm not comfortable with making those trade-offs. You know, battery life and the cameras are two of the most important things that I look for when choosing a smartphone. So unfortunately, as much as I love the design on this thing and I would love to make it my main device, I just can't. However, I think that this phone is perfect for the so-called prosumers. You know, regular consumers who always go out and buy the latest and highest end Apple devices because they feel expensive, rather than because they need any of the specific features. Now, if you're trying to decide between the iPhone Air and the 17 Pro Max, I'll have a comparison video coming out on the channel in a few days. Full review for the iPhone 17 Pro Max should also be out on the channel in a few weeks, so make sure to like this video and subscribe so that you don't miss that. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for the next one.